Welcome back to the Europe Spring Preliminary. I'm Robert Wing, joined on the desk by Brian Kibler and, of course, TJ Sanders. We just witnessed George C. secure his spot to the Europe Spring Championship, and I got to say, TJ...
My man!
I'm right there with you. That was probably the best interview I've ever seen.
It was great. It was great.
Yeah. George C. is a cheeky lad to the very letter.
To say the least.
Right, so he joins Crane, Loyan, Tice, a.k.a. Wonder, Einer, and himself. So we have 6 of 8, and this next match will be another decider match. So whoever wins this is moving on. Of course, it is going to be Casie versus YouKnowWP, 2 players.
A.k.a. TJ.
TJ, stop. We've been through this. YouKnowWP was someone we've seen on stream already. Casie, we haven't seen just yet, but Dan was talking about Casie a little bit. TJ, any more information you can give us about Casie?
He's just a really good player. Of
course,
that's it. Just that.
Of course, making it to this point. And Dan said he's actually a practice partner of Casie. And if Dan chooses you as your practice partner, not only does it mean you're fantastic at Hearthstone, but it also means that you have some next-level strats up your sleeve.
That's
because
true.
Dan's always looking for the next best thing. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he has in store for us.
Yeah, coming into this match, Casie actually took out my pick, Stan Sifka, from the tournament. So clearly he's not necessarily had an easy road to get here, as he certainly has one more match ahead of him that will not be easy either.
Right, and as I said, we've seen YouKnowWP. I want to point out this is basically, aside from the Warrior pick there, a mirror match. So we have a lot of things in common here. They're both running Miracle Rogue. Now, that's an interesting talking point because the Miracle Rogues do differ. Casie is running Leroy in his Miracle Rogue version. YouKnowWP is not running Leroy, instead going Pirate Faceless. So, Brian, what are the major differences in those decks?
It's just a matter of how you're exactly choosing to do sort of your burst damage later in the game. With the Pirate, you have a little bit more flexibility to use the Pirate with Cold Blood and not necessarily actually end the game in the same turn. Leroy obviously has the drawback. Plus, you do exactly the same amount of damage with slightly more cards, but it's more the fact that you have slightly more ability to leverage it as something other than a finisher.
Yeah, and I think the South Sea Deckhand Faceless version has a little bit higher maximum potential.
Mm-hmm.
I'd imagine he, brought it thinking that he was going to be up against a lot of Paladins because even after the healing, you can do much more burst from hand. But like you said, the flexibility is a little bit different. It's just how you choose to allocate the resources. I know the Terrence M., who was a player that finished second at DreamHack Austin, he brought the Faceless plus South Sea Deckhand version, and he had a lot of success with it across that tournament. So it is good. There's
also just the flexibility of Faceless Manipulator as well.
Sure.
In a metagame where you're playing against a lot of decks that have big minions, right. I mean, we saw a Ysera get Faceless by a Reno Lock deck earlier this weekend. So there's definitely that part of the card that some people kind of forget about. They just think of it, oh, this is part of my burst combo. It's like, no, this can also do other things.
Right, and while we have seen a lot of similar classes over the course of the weekend, we've seen multiple players bringing Warlock. Usually one's bringing Zoo, one's bringing Reno Lock. Both these players bringing Reno Lock, and they're pretty much very similar lists, so there's not necessarily a lot of surprises there. And their N'Zoth Paladin lists are also fairly similar, so these are 2 players who have made it this far. Again, 1 match away from securing a spot at the Europe Spring Championship, bringing very similar lineups. So it's going to be interesting because a lot of times when you have these matchups, you think like, oh, maybe one player just has the more favorable lineup. But this is really going to come down to who plays it better. But jumping right into Game 1, and Brian, TJ, take it away.
All right, well, we are getting right into the Miracle Mirror match right away. Casie on the bottom of the screen, YouKnowWP on the top. So what are these players looking for in the early turns?
Just looking for tempo, and a lot of times you can keep. You're looking for Auctioneer in this matchup. The Auctioneer is just incredibly important going into the mirror matchup because if one player has Auctioneer and the other doesn't, it gives the player that does a big advantage. Definitely looking for that. A lot of times you'll see them keep it only if they have good tempo to start from the early game because you can just out pressure. From the get-go. Yeah,
we saw in the previous match, maybe it was actually 2 matches ago, where now I'm losing. There's been so many matches today. I'm losing exactly what I'm talking about. There was, I think it was actually Tice playing a Rogue Mirror, where he just got a little bit of extra damage in early on, was able to, because of that, force his opponent to kind of react to his possibility of burst later in the game. Just that early damage lead can be a very big deal.
Yeah. And both players sort of with similar openings here, and this is a big one whether or not to attack with the first dagger.
Yeah,
it's a debate that spans that stands the test of time.
Oh, yeah.
With rogue decks, and I'm in the camp of attacking phase to get that damage in early, but apparently Casie and YouKnowWP are not. I understand for YouKnowWP because he has a deadly poison.
Yeah, still gonna hold on to that dagger. It looks like no stabbing just yet. The reasoning behind whether you attack with the dagger or not is, you don't want to be forced to re-dagger on a turn later on where you may be able to either want to use deadly poison or kill a minion with the dagger attack, like say a Tomb Pillager, which maybe traded into an SI agent. So the mana efficiency is very important in those situations.
Yeah, and usually you'll see players attack when they know that they'll be re-daggering in one of their opening turns. Say if their hand is poor, or if they see their opponent passing turns, they know that they have room to re-dagger in one of the turns coming up, so they can afford to attack with it and get in that extra damage. But right now, Casie is taking an early board lead and an early damage lead, so YouKnowWP is going to have to spend a lot of resources here if he wants to remove both these SI agents. I guess just Deadly Poison and Eviscerate will deal with it.
Yeah, he can take them off the board fairly easily. Not really able to advance his own board at the same time, however.
Yeah, which is a big deal. He can, Deadly Poison, Eviscerate, and then coin out an Earthring Farseer, but the coin has a lot of use in this matchup, whether it be to combo one of your spells, or later on with Gadget and Auctioneer, it becomes a draw. So it looks like he is just going to Azure Drake this turn and opt to leave the SI agents on the board.
Casie with an Azure Drake of his own, and does have that dagger remaining. He's going to trade in one of his SIs and just continue to push damage with the other.
Yeah. So Backstab picked up. Not really many minions here for YouKnowWP, which is not what you want unless you have Auctioneer, and he doesn't. He hasn't picked one up yet. So basically his only job right now is to remove. That's the only thing he can do right now, is remove minions from the board. But again, like you mentioned earlier, he's not developing his own stuff.
The Earthring Ring does come down and heal himself back up and gives him the initiative on the board here.
Holy moly.
Oh, right, that was a quick Tomb Pillager into attack redagger. So Casie, he clearly knows exactly what he wants to be doing here.
He's whipping through these turns.
Yeah.
Jeez.
All right, so YouKnowWP, he picks up Deadly Poison number 2. Probably not going to see that used here just yet. He has, well, he could use the second Deadly Poison just to attack into the Tomb Pillager, but he does have Eviscerate, which can pretty cleanly remove it.
Yeah, so YouKnowWP, there's sometimes as the rogue when you don't have Auctioneer and you have a handful of spells, you have to flip the switch in your brain.
Right.
Do I have to go aggressive? And what YouKnowWP now, he can set up the Cold Blood on the Earthring Farseer and conceal it and just try and push damage and hope that he can end the game. He does have Cold Blood. He does have Eviscerate. So that right there is 8 damage. He could get the 6 damage from the Earthring Farseer in twice. With 2 attacks of Deadly Poison, he might be able to set up for a possible 3-turn lethal. And I think that's what he's doing right now. He's counting the math to see whether or not he can make that push.
Yeah,
and I agree with
that's what he's going for. He goes Cold Blood and just going to go ahead and conceal, leaving the Tomb Pillager up. He's not even going to use his Eviscerate. Wants to save that for that burst damage, as you mentioned. So this is potentially a little bit of a risky move, but Casie doesn't really necessarily have great ways to stop this either. The conceal keeps his Farseer away from any possible removal on the other side of the board.
Yeah, the thing here, though, is YouKnowWP, he didn't use the Eviscerate, which is good, because he didn't want to go all in on that line of play, because he wasn't sure what kind of hand Casie would have, if he'd be able to heal up, which he did. So now he's quite a bit out of range of being able to do that.
Sap is a nice draw for YouKnowWP. It gives him the ability to at least slow Casey's board down. So he's able to just get another 7-10 damage in with these two, putting Casie down to just 9 life. And he still has that Eviscerate in his hand and now is very far ahead. Looking at Casey's side, he has Leroy plus Eviscerate. That represents 10 damage. I think YouKnowWP actually may be debating if he needs to coin Eviscerate.
Yeah.
Because if Casie, between Leroy, Eviscerate, if he has, and the minion in play rather, if he can find just a little bit of extra damage, he may be able to just close out this game next turn. He found deadly poison. If this stays up, I think it actually going to end the game. So YouKnowWP, he decides, okay, I can't risk that. I have to take out this Violet Teacher right here.
It also protects these minions that he has on the board. He doesn't really need much more damage, so he's thinking, well, if one of these minions sticks, then I'm in a good spot. But Casie does draw into that sap, so he is going to be able to put that Azure Drake back in the hand. But that also gives YouKnowWP another draw to find potentially even more damage.
It's interesting. He did choose to sap the Azure Drake. He could have chosen to sap Earthring Farseer. He's looking for the Leroy burst because he didn't want his opponent to heal up. But this does give, as you mentioned, YouKnowWP another shot at some sort of burst of his own. He finds Auctioneer, not really what he needs right now. This is a game that's coming down to the next couple of turns. The burst of card draw not available right now.
And he has to think whether or not to use the Phantom Knives this turn or save it for the Gadgetzan Auctioneer. But 3-mana card with Gadgetzan Auctioneer is not something you usually want to hold on to. And this at least gets 2 damage onto the Tomb Pillager, which isn't really that relevant. But who knows? It might be in the coming turns if he picks up an SI agent and still has to deal with it or something.
Yeah, if Casie can find Cold Blood or Eviscerate to go with his Leroy, he will have lethal next turn. He has multiple draws for both of them because of Phantom Knives. There's Cold Blood.
Wow.
Leroy, Cold Blood, that's going to do it. Casie, he was behind for quite a while that game, but has the burst to take down YouKnowWP in game 1.
Yeah, and that was sort of just Casie getting that damage lead that we talked about in the early game. I really have to commend YouKnowWP for sort of recognizing that his only win condition would be to try and all in on that Earthring Farseer and that one board that he had, using that Cold Blood early, trying to use that Conceal instead of maybe saving it for an Auctioneer. But unfortunately, he just didn't have the hand to be able to do it. He made the best of it, but Casie comes out on top.
Yeah, a lot of people think of Miracle Rogue as a deck that's just centered around Auctioneer.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you have those games, you just don't draw Auctioneer and you lose. It's like, well, you need to make the best of those games too. And neither player actually had Auctioneer that game and sort of recognized this is the sort of way that I'm going to have to play to my win condition in these circumstances.
Yeah, so very, very true and very well played by both players. You can see how much experience Casie has with that Rogue, by how quickly he was playing. But now we're going to move into what is a Reno lock from Casie, and WP is still throwing out that Rogue.
Yeah, so the Reno lock deck from Casie, it was both players, as you mentioned earlier, playing a mirror match here, Paladin, Rogue, Warlock. We had a little bit of graphical error earlier that showed Warrior on the screen, but it's been corrected now. Casie playing the Reno lock here against the Miracle Rogue. This is definitely a matchup that can go either way.
And WP, as we said earlier, is running the South Sea Deckhand Faceless Manipulator version, which has a lot more flexibility in this matchup and a little bit more maximum potential damage at the cost of more cards. You need the extra card.
It's also worth noting that this is one of those matchups where there are big minions that can potentially come down, and if the Faceless Manipulator shows up, can just get copied.
Yeah. Ragnaros, the Fire Lord, potentially.
Mountain Giant.
Mountain Giant.
Pretty big.
Even a Twilight Drake.
Yeah. Not bad either way. So both players with okay but unspectacular opening hands. Though there is that Mountain Giant and Twilight Drake for Casie. This is kind of an interesting decision because if he plays Doomsayer here, he's able to preempt a possible minion from his opponent, but it does cost him in terms of the cost of Mountain Giant.
Yeah.
So if he were to tap here, and then he can play Twilight Drake, and then tap into Mountain Giant the following turn.
Yeah.
But if he were to play the Doomsayer, he slows down his opponent. So a little bit, you saw him kind of debating the opportunity cost of each of those.
Yeah. And it looks like WP is going to go for a Edwin Van Cleef play here. Leaving it at 6-6. Of course, once again, these players know each other's deck lists. They were posted at the beginning of the tournament for everybody to see. So WP knows that there is a big game hunter in Casey's list, and actually it's in his hand.
And crucially, the cost change to Big Game Hunter, a very important change on that particular turn, because otherwise Casie would have had the Abusive Sergeant plus Big Game Hunter play available to him to kill Van Cleef.
Yeah.
So in many circumstances, not a big deal. In that one, a very big deal.
Yes. And unfortunately, WP did use the coin last turn to get out that Van Cleef at a little bit bigger state. So he would have had a neat play here where he could Faceless Manipulator, backstab and trade, so he'd be left with a Mountain Giant, and his opponent would not, but he's one turn away from doing that.
And we may still see the backstab trade. That Mountain Giant is pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
He doesn't have Sap. Sap is generally the rogue's primary answer to Giants in this sort of situation. So we're going to have to see how YouKnowWP does choose to deal with this.
He might feel like he needs to pressure here. And
it's true.
Just go face and try and pull it together. But, you know, that's a big boy to get through. And the 6 damage could be pretty irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, especially if Casey's able to use that Mountain Giant to leverage a better position on the board.
Yeah, and Casie does just choose to fire off a Shadow Bolt. And now, with the Mountain Giant gone and no longer the sort of cost consideration of import for his play, he does decide to play the Doomsayer to just preempt any minion play from YouKnowWP.
And this is pretty much just going to be a pass turn, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely going very much Casey's way. YouKnowWP not really able to develop anything here, and he also, crucially, does not have access to Gadgets and Auctioneer right now. If he did, he would, not this turn into the Doomsayer, but potentially next turn be able to play that and really start generating additional resources. So he's going to need to draw one very soon.
Yeah, I don't really know what he's debating about here. Earthring Farseer and Sap?
Wow. All right. So YouKnowWP deciding that he feels that he really can't afford to pass the tempo back over to Casie there. And Casie goes ahead and very quickly Peddler into Voidwalker into Twilight Drake. He is not slowing down.
He's like, it's past my bedtime. Let's get to the Europe Spring Championship real quick here, guys.
He clearly has a lot of experience in this matchup. He knows what he needs to be doing, and what he needs to do is pressure the rogue.
Yeah. There are a lot of, or I don't want to say a lot, but there are a few sort of instinctual players in the competitive Hearthstone scene that just, play really quickly. Zixo comes to mind when I think of that, who just play incredibly quickly, even in situations where there's so much on the line, because overthinking can be something that happens to players when they get into matches of this type of importance. So Casie just trusting in, that instinct for him to play this quickly.
Well, I have to imagine that for many of these players, Miracle Rogue must have been among, if not the deck, that they tested the most against in this particular metagame. So sort of an understanding of exactly how each stage of the game plays out is, entirely likely among players who are of the caliber to have reached this point.
I play my stuff, I kill his stuff.
It's like, all right, I got a plan. It's play my guy, kill your guy, play my biggest guy.
Kill your biggest guy.
Aha! I figured it out.
I've won Hearthstone.
And here, YouKnowWP gonna do a little bit of work to try and get through that board, but this is not really making very much progress. He really needs to find some way to either assemble a whole lot of burst damage or some way to assemble a whole lot more resources, because this is a really rough spot for him.
Yeah. And he's still just making sure that he keeps the board clean. Of course, having anything on the board as when you're playing against Miracle Rogue can be dangerous, because it just makes a play where they could conceal. They auctioneer and have conceal. It just makes those plays that much stronger because they leave that much more damage on the board.
And YouKnowWP just going to go ahead and fan here. By the way, the previous turn, I like Casey's play of trading away his minion that could potentially die to the Deadly Poison Dagger and defendering up to keep a lot of health on his Twilight Drake. A lot of players would be like, oh, I'll attack with this my Twilight Drake to keep, the sort of distributed health on both. But this plays around the attack with the dagger actually killing his biggest minion, which is kind of his utmost concern right now.
Yeah. And YouKnowWP still just not drawing anything of much consequence. He can coin out the SI-7 agent here to take out the Defender of Argus, but he's going to be close to taking out this this Twilight Drake. And he's getting in for so much damage. How much does he even have in his hand right now?
He has the Power Overwhelming and the Hellfire, and I think we're going to see Faceless just build another big Drake. And this is sort of the flexibility of that card we mentioned earlier, just putting YouKnowWP in a really rough spot. There's Auctioneer, but it might be too late.
Yeah, not even a tap from Casie. He realizes he's at a low health. He has what he needs to win the game in his mind. And this is the turn that, like you said, a little bit like, if it had came last turn, maybe he'd have a chance. But usually you can't develop the Auctioneer, make it safe, and clear the board all in the same turn, unless you get a crazy string of draws.
All right, well,
prep into removal into prep into removal.
I mean, he already used one sap earlier, trying to sort of maintain that board pressure, but he's just fallen so far behind this Twilight Drake as a result. You know, he tried to take an aggressive posture, but just didn't end up having the backup in terms of minions that he needed.
Mm-hmm. He can Sousy Deckhand and Cold Blood the Sousy Deckhand, and even if he doesn't draw into another spell, he could use that plus the SI7 agent to clear out one of these Twilight Drakes.
This guy's
all right, so he does manage to clear off enough damage that's at least not quite lethal next turn. Again, there's 7.
Oh, is it one off?
It's one off. He actually currently has
14.
7 on board, 7 in hand. Senjin does not do it. He's just going to power overwhelming attack and Shadow Flame, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is going to take care of YouKnowWP's board and just continue the march of big minions.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's really all he needs to do. YouKnowWP hasn't really shown him anything that gives Casie the indication that he's under threat. And even if he was, the big minions that he have also just happen to have taunt in. With a Cold Blood draw and no real cycle, aside from maybe getting the toxin, the draw card toxin from Zeril.
I mean, is this a spot he just needs to faceless his opponent's big taunt minion?
Maybe, but at this point, he seemed incredibly reluctant.
Yeah, he's been holding that faceless for so long, and he already used his South Sea, so that faceless is, well, it's not gonna do anything this game because this game is over.
Yeah.
Hellfire closed it out for Casie, who's now just 1 game away from the Europe Spring Championship.
This series is moving at an incredible pace.
It really is. I mean, the pace that Casey's playing here, we've seen so many players just playing so methodically, taking their time every turn, which is understandable with the stakes involved, but he clearly knows exactly what he wants to do.
Yeah, and I think these guys are playing from the same venue as well. Of course, that's why we don't have one player being shown on the screen. So maybe they know each other. Maybe they were practicing against each other or something. That's why they're both playing so quickly. Might be also the reason why they have such similar deck lineups. But it would be pretty interesting. But yeah, they're playing these matches like the look on Casey's face. He doesn't seem nervous. He doesn't really
seem. Not at all. No,
he's just jamming, man. He's just throwing his cards out and he's winning and doing it. And he's 1 game away, like you said, from securing that spot in the championship. Yeah,
now it's just down to his N'Zoth Paladin deck, which lines up reasonably well against at least a couple of WP's decks. The Rogue definitely plays where that deck struggles. We've seen that before.
Yeah. N'Zoth Paladin has sort of disappointed, I know, a lot of players throughout this weekend. I believe it's, at least on the games that we've shown on stream, it has lost a few more games than it has won. He is going into a position, though, where he has 3 opportunities to win with it. But as you said, a few rough matchups. The mirror is very long and sometimes very weird. Rogue is a really great matchup against N'Zoth Paladin most of the time. And Reno Warlock, again, is sort of a little bit of a toss-up. So it's tough to say at this point, but just having a 2-game lead without even looking at decks usually gives that player an advantage. So he's in a good spot.
All right, well, it will be the Rogue deck for YouKnowWP. Definitely, as we said, a very difficult matchup for the Paladin, but certainly by no means unwinnable.
Yes.
We actually saw last weekend, it's actually on the back of exactly that card, Ragnaros the Fire Lord, that Chalky was able to take down Miracle Rogue on his way to winning DreamHack.
Yeah, and that's a key card in a lot of matchups now, especially for the N'Zoth Paladin. It deals with Freeze Mage very well. Of course, it deals with Stealth Auctioneers very well. The time for Ragnaros is now.
We saw Ragnaros kind of fade out of favor quite a bit during the previous standard season. I think in part due to the popularity of Paladin decks with Muster for Battle.
Yeah.
You saw lots of minions spread across boards all the time. Now, not quite as common to see those big boards except at a zoo.
Yeah, maybe also because of the popularity of Dr. Boom.
It's true.
Causing the popularity of...
It's like, oh, Big Game Hunter.
Big Game Hunter.
It's true.
Both those cards Rag does not do very well against. So.
Absolutely. All right, well, we are into the game, and again, you know, Casie just playing his control deck at a breakneck pace.
Yes. He's doing us all a favor, I suppose. Yeah, but nothing crazy here as seen from Casie's deck. This seems like a pretty normal list. Agent to Pure is a card that some players will choose to put in, and some player will not choose to put in. And there, you can see on your screen the road from Casie moving into this, taking out Sensivka, like you mentioned earlier, and Pavel with a pretty good win-loss record.
Yeah, I mean, he came through the lower bracket, which meant that he had a very long road. We see, you know, 21 wins. That's
32 games total.
So it's, you know, such a long weekend, and this is the culmination of all of it. He's just one game away at this point.
Yeah.
YouKnowWP, we did mention, you know, this is kind of his game to lose right now. This is a generally considered a very favorable matchup for the Miracle Rogue deck because the Paladin deck doesn't really put a ton of pressure on them, which allows them to build up that hand and get those huge Gadgets and Auctioneer combo turns.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of times N'Zoth Paladins even have a good way to deal with it. It's just, even if they have a way to deal with Stealth Auctioneer, if the Rogue can be greedy with it, the Paladin's not going to really apply pressure to sort of rush the Rogue into doing much of anything.
And this might look like a pretty weird play, YouKnowWP attacking a Recruit while the Doomsayer is about to go off.
Yeah.
It does help against the threat of Solemn Vigil.
Solemn Vigil.
He ends up not reducing this cost of Solemn Vigil by 2, instead only reducing it by 1, recognizing that against a deck with so much healing, a dagger hit for 1 to the face, probably not going to matter, but if Casie was relying on casting Solemn Vigil the next turn, that could be a big difference in the game.
Yeah, the extra card draw can matter, the extra health point might not matter at the end of the day. And YouKnowWP can set up a lot of burst. South Sea Deckhand plus double Cold Blood with the Faceless Manipulator. As long as you have a weapon equipped, is 20 burst damage from hand with 4 cards.
It's a lot.
It's quite a bit, yeah. And you can assemble the pieces relatively easily. The thing is, you still need to make sure you make some other damage stick, or have a concealed mini that sticks the turn prior. So it's not a one-turn kill.
Look at this, Casie just, all right, play this, go. He literally
is it green?
Takes his turn in a matter of seconds. True Silver takes out the Azure Drake. Acidic Swamp Ooze destroys the dagger along with the Deadly Poison. So, you know, this game so far is actually going quite well for Casie, as all things considered.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell that during his opponent's turn, he's really thinking it over and thinking of the possibilities. You see him mousing over his cards and things like that. So it looks like he's just taking YouKnowWP's turn. And every time YouKnowWP plays something, Casie sort of nods in approval. He's like, yep, yeah, okay. That's what I expected.
Yeah,
I'm gonna kill that in 3 seconds next turn and then end my turn.
Already had that in mind. Yep. Okay, yep.
Check, done.
Yep, there's that Solemn Vigil. We're going to see coin into... I'm actually a little bit surprised that we're necessarily going to see the Fire Lord come down here. He's just going to go ahead and pressure him. There's a couple of schools of thought about this. One is, okay, you want to potentially try and save this for a Concealed Auctioneer. On the other hand, you also just need to kill your opponent.
Yeah.
You know, this is a matchup where you don't want to give the Rogue any time if you can avoid it. And yeah, we're going to see Auctioneer does come down, and I think that we're probably going to see a flurry of spells, most likely including Sap on that Ragnaros.
Yeah, the thing is, a lot of times Rogues won't deal with the Rag by killing it.
Right.
They'll sap it. So if you want it to deal with the Auctioneer, a lot of times you'll get it back, even if you play it the turn prior, because it's hard for Rogues to deal with big minions, or it doesn't usually feel great for them to deal with big minions with just spells, because that means they're throwing Eviscerates or multiple spells in order to deal with those large minions.
All right, in case YouKnowWP gonna go ahead and redagger. He could have played out his his South Sea to try and potentially absorb a Rag hit, but wants to save that for the burst combo. And I can't imagine we see. Well, there actually is a couple options here. He could go ahead and Equality Consecrate, but he's just gonna go for it. Ragnaros comes down.
Trust
Who
the
is the
instincts.
insect who must die? It is the Auctioneer. So all of a sudden, Casie going from a position that was very troubled by the power of Ragnaros, back to an even board with just Ragnaros.
Yeah, and when a Rogue is under pressure, sometimes they'll use their damage spells, or even just their cards in general inefficiently, because they just don't have really ways to gain health outside of maybe a single Earthen Ring Farseer. So pressure is one of the ways a lot of times how you beat Rogue, even when you're playing slower control decks, because they don't usually expect it. Their game plan going in is, I'm going to have a lot of time, I'm going to draw cards, even their mulligan strategy during that part. So it looks like WP is not going to deal with this.
Wow.
And with the double consecration,
this is very nearly lethal. Consecration clears off both of these, does 4 damage to YouKnowWP. Ragnaros, only one target, it's the face.
He's going to be at 2 health with not many resources left. That means Casie just needs like a true silver champion. He still has Tyrion left. So
he's Tyrion in his hand.
Yeah, he could get even just an Ashbringer swing would do it.
All right, well, a second Auctioneer is the draw for YouKnowWP, so if he's going to find something, this is how he'll do it.
With 2 coins and 10 mana,
he
could draw his entire deck.
Just about. He even has a Faceless Manipulator. If he really wanted to, he could Faceless that Ragnaros and go, okay.
Yeah.
Ragnaros did so well for you. Let's see how he does for me.
And he could actually Faceless Manipulator and then kill his opponent's Rag by playing South Sea Deckhand, Eviscerate, and SI Agent with the coin, because that would be 11 total mana. So, that might be the option here, but it looks like WP is going to search.
And he's actually, the rope is already burning. He does not have much time to actually evaluate each of these draws from Auctioneer. He's going to have to make these decisions very quickly. All right, go ahead and Farseer into, all right, it's Van Cleef.
Oh, man.
Oh, Eadric the Pure comes down. And Forbidden Healing, pumping him right back up. This is a 1 in 4 shot of just ending the game right here. Oh, it takes out the Auctioneer.
Wow.
Does not end the game, but it
second
takes out,
best target besides the face.
Takes out the biggest possible threat on the board, with the exception of the opponent.
Yes. And WP, you're starting to piece together quite a bit of damage.
Yeah.
He does have South Sea Deckhand plus a single Cold Blood and a Faceless Manipulator, which right now is 12 damage with a weapon equipped, but he only has 3 represented on board because of Eadric the Pure, and that Rag is still sitting on the board, and it has yet to be dealt with, and it seems like P just doesn't want to deal with it. He hasn't even touching it. He's just ignoring it, saying, I'm just going to try and make my board a little bigger, reduce the chance that you have to hit my face, and hope that I can pull out a miracle win.
Yeah, he does know that Casie is out of Consecrations, and because he's out of Consecrations, the only kind of way he could clear the board is a symmetrical way to clear the board. So 2 damage poison off of Zeril, SI Agent, just going to go face. Yeah, he is just kind of hoping that he can close this game out through damage before Ragnaros hits his face, or Casie finds that true silver champion to end the game.
What's it going to be?
Spellbreaker. He can Sidge Rag! There it is! Ragnaros, no fireballs here, punches YouKnowWP in the face, and Casie is moving on to the Europe Spring Championship.
Yeah, very well played, and that was the quickest series of the day. And you can see,
absolutely,
he's so zen. He's like in his place right now. He closes his eyes and says, "Yes."
He was playing like lightning speed. It was crazy.
I went to the bathroom and then I was just like, "Rob, no, it's over." I'm like, "Okay, run back."
Yeah,
here I am.
Yeah, one of the I think the only 3-0 today, at least from what we've shown on the stream, if I can remember correctly. And the animations weren't even resolving. You could see the end turn button being clicked, and then 10 seconds later, the turn passes over. Insane speed, insane game. Well played by Casie.
I want to point out, too, that Paladin versus Rogue has always been really, really hard to win as a Paladin player because you only have 30 health, and all the healing in the world doesn't matter when they just burst you down over the course of 1 or even 2 turns. So hats off to Casie. What a dominating victory, and he is going to the Europe Spring Championship now after that 3-0.
Yeah, unfortunately, that means WP has made it this far, but falls. My Mohawk brother, as we saw earlier, a little bit disappointed, but I'm really happy for Casie. And maybe his strategy going in was, I'm playing against a Miracle Rogue deck. I'm not going to give him time to think. I'm just going to go. I'm just going to play all my stuff, and I'm going to go. And you could see at the end there, WP actually sort of roped out that turn. He did have a game plan, but he was hesitating a little bit. There might have been something better in there, but who knows? Casie didn't really give him an opportunity to really think over his plays. So cool to see.
Yeah, I got to point out, too, that Casey's opening hand was just extremely slow. We saw it loaded with Ragnarai. That's what we're calling the pull now. Ragnarai, other legendaries coming up really quickly. And, it's not like he was just, like, zooing him down either. Like, he had to piece it together and just kind of be like, all right, I'm going to make him have these things. And if he doesn't have it, then, I'm going to find somebody to kill him with True Silver Champion or the Spellbreaker silencing the Ragnaros, which is a great way to kill someone.
Ragnaros getting the job done.
All right, so we have 7 out of 8 players going to the Europe Spring Championship. Up next, we will have what I consider to be probably the premier match for the rest of the day. It's, the only one left.
The premier match.
You're really going out on a limb with that one.
Let's hope they buy it at home. The world champion, Ostkaka, taking on Turna for that 8th and final spot. Looking forward to that. Ostkaka obviously has a lot to prove in that one.
Oh, yeah. A lot to prove. He hasn't done anything before.
Yeah.
Not in 2016. It's a new year, Brian.
That's true. But when you're the world champion, I think you deserve maybe a little bit of a break.
Maybe a little bit.
There's not too many expectations on you to come into the next year and just, dominate the field again. I wonder how long it's going to be before we have a repeat world champion.
If Ostkaka has anything to say about it, not that long.
65 years later, Ostkaka at age 85. Just throwing a number out there.
That's some caster math for you. Calmly and quietly. But, for Turna, this is an opportunity where obviously he was bumped down by AK Wonder. What an absolute opportunity it would be to take down the world champion as you secure your spot for the Europe Spring Championship.
Yep, absolutely. Ostkaka obviously not going to be a pushover in that match, but he did end up fighting through the lower bracket all the way to get here.
Yeah, no, he took out Faramir as well, which maybe if you weren't necessarily watching competitive Hearthstone in 2014, you might not know who Faramir is. He's one of the recent additions to Team Virtus Pro, and he's kind of one of those crafty veterans always just hanging out in the wings, and you don't really want to run into him because he's an extremely skilled player, has won some major events in his time.
He's also a foot taller than the rest of the people in the Hearthstone scene. We could we're talking about earlier. We could put together the team of giants for Hearthstone with Nimsh and Chalky, all the guys that are close to 7 feet tall.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that's a reason you build a team, right? You're just like, let's get the biggest, bring out Dark Wanix again, wherever he's out there somewhere, being tall.
Yeah. If I made a Hearthstone team, I wouldn't say, don't send me, how many top 100 finishes you have. Just add up your weight. And then send it to me. And the highest weight wins. You're the team that I'm signing.
It's like a high school football roster. All of them are exaggerated. It's like, I'm 7'4", 400 pounds.
That's what it says on my driver's license. I'm 7'4". Don't believe it's me when I get pulled over, but, Yeah, no, I definitely think, that would be an interesting team premise, although most of those players are on teams, so I probably wouldn't want to break it up for just that. But yeah, reiterating the fact that Ostkaka had to go from the upper bracket to the loser's bracket. He was sent down there, or the lower bracket rather, sent there by Einar. And then goes ahead and beats, I believe, 2 to 3 people to make it back to this point. So both of these players down in the lower bracket with, as we pointed out, a lot to prove. And going into this final matchup, statement games for everybody involved.
Yeah, Ostkaka actually had to beat also Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
He had to defeat Yogg Saron.
Twice.
That's not easy. Not easy to do.
Is a big feat as well. So, and you know what? Even if Ostkaka doesn't make it, even if it is Turna, Turna's showed off that he's a fantastic player. He had to go up against 3 Cthulhu decks, which, a lot of people were saying Cthulhu's not that weak, but AK Wonder just played those decks so well, and that was a feat. And I'm happy with the lineup of players that we have. The 7 so far that we've seen move to the Spring Championship is just absurd. It's so stacked, and I'm really looking forward to that. And with this new meta coming out, there's just a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, and we were wondering at the start of the broadcast, again, what would the narrative be? Would it be upsets again, or would it be kind of the established entrenched players kind of holding their own? And, obviously some players did not make it this far that we were kind of looking to possibly, Stan Sivka, a name, RDU, another name we were looking at to possibly make it all the way. But for the most part, these are all players, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 that we all know and have come to appreciate as pro players in the Europe scene. But it sounds like Dan is ready to go ahead and give an interview, so we'll toss it over to him.
Thank you very much, Rob, and a great job buying some time here as we got ready to sit down with Casie, and get a few words. Now, Casie, I've known you for a little bit of time, but I know you've been trying to get really competitive these days, and now you've actually qualified for the championship tour for the spring preliminary. What's it feel like right now for you?
It's really great. I played against my practice partner before this round. It didn't matter if I win or not because I played versus my practice partner. If he wins, I'm happy for him. But now that I 3-0'd him, I'm even happier. I don't know. Feels good.
Well, I mean, it feels like, you know, a team effort. And now you have to go win on behalf of you and your practice partners. Well, congratulations. I know for a long time you've been kind of lurking the competitive scene. Can you give a little bit more background on how long you've been playing Hearthstone and your journey to get to the spring preliminaries?
I'm playing since open beta, and I took a break for 2 months or something. And now the lucky one actually, and Frozen told me to play more. And shout out to those 2 guys, Frozen and the lucky one. Thank you for helping me prepare for it. It's especially the Reno log helped me to win this tournament because it went undefeated. And in my opinion, it's the best deck in this format. And thanks to the lucky one.
That's awesome. I know you love Rogue too. You're
Yes,
Rogue loyalist. You don't think Rogue's the strong one performing for you? You think the Reno lock was the heavy lifter here?
Rogue would have been the best, but it got banned a lot of times.
Well, they did their research because you're a scary Rogue player indeed. Taking a look at the other people who've qualified all the way from Tice, Crane, Loyan, etc. How do you feel about competing in this elite field of 8 players next month?
I'm feeling good. I'm gonna win it, for sure.
There, that's the answer I'm looking for, man. Good, we media trained you correctly. Awesome. Well, I think a lot of people were not expecting you to necessarily qualify for the top 8, but now that you're here and a lot of people are starting to hear more about you, I mean, this is your opportunity to kind of like introduce yourself to the community. So why don't you take the floor, say a few words before we send you off and get ready for our final match.
I have nothing to say.
All right. Well, you thanked your practice partners. Nothing else much to say. Congratulations, Casie. You're the 7th person, and we'll see you next month at the Spring Championship. All right, so you can see that Casie was pretty happy just qualifying. And, you know, we do have some players who are established and they're making it, but we also have some people who are working really hard, trying to break into the upper echelons of the professional scene. And, you know, last year it was Osaka, and he was able to break into it. And this year it's guys like Casie and Loyan, all them making the case for themselves as players. And hope you guys have been enjoying it and following along with us. Make sure you're hashtagging HCT, send Casie your congratulations, and get ready for our last match of the day. Osaka, world champion from 2015, up against Turna, a player who is also looking to join Casie and Loyan on the upcomer train. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.